All right, let's talk about something that's a real game changer. We're diving into this powerful idea that true, lasting success, well, it doesn't come from some big, flashy, heroic moment. Nope. It's built on something a lot quieter, something you do every single day. We're going to break down the 1% rule and the 4 habits that secretly use it to build your success. Let's get into it. So, you ever have one of those massive goals? Like, I'm going to get in the best shape of my life, or I'm starting a business, or I'm finally going to learn Spanish. And you're all fired up, but then you just feel completely stuck. You're looking at this mountain in front of you, and it feels so impossibly high, you don't even take the first step. Yeah, that feeling is super common, and it's mostly because we're looking at success all wrong. We're kind of sold the story of the overnight success, that one brilliant idea, that single moment that changes everything. We picture ourselves taking this one giant heroic leap from where we are right now straight to the finish line. But what if that whole picture is just a myth? What if real achievement isn't a leap at all? What if it's actually the sum of a million tiny, consistent steps you take day after day, steps so small that honestly, you barely even notice them? This whole idea of the giant leap, let's just call it the success illusion. It looks great in a movie, makes for a killer story, but in real life, it's the very thing that keeps so many of us paralyzed, feeling like we're just spinning our wheels. Okay, so if the big leap is an illusion, then what's real? Well, the answer is this simple but honestly profound principle that just flips the whole game on its head. It's called the 1% rule. The 1% rule is beautiful because it's so simple. It's all about forgetting the giant leaps and just focusing on one thing. Can you get just 1% better today? Not 100% better, not even 10%, just one tiny percent. Now, let's look at the math, because this is where it gets kind of mind-blowing. 1%. It feels like nothing, right? But if you get just 1% better every single day for 1 year, the magic of compounding kicks in. You don't just end up a little bit better. You end up nearly 38 times better than where you started. That is the insane power of tiny, consistent gains. But, and this is a big but, this is a two-way street. That same compounding effect works in reverse. If you get 1% worse each day, maybe you skip the gym, you eat junk food, you put off that one important task, those tiny negative habits also compound. And at the end of the year, you've basically dwindled down to nothing. The stakes are really high, and they're being decided by your smallest daily choices. So how do we make sure we're on the right side of that equation? The math is one thing, but actually putting the 1% rule to work, well, that comes down to building 4 very specific habits that make this whole principle a reality. So these are our 4 pillars. First, showing up consistently. Second, focusing on the process. Third, reflecting and adjusting. And fourth, practicing patience. Let's dig into each one. Okay, habit 1. This is the big one. You just have to show up. It's not about having the world's most amazing, intense workout every single day. It's about just putting on your running shoes and walking out the door, even if it's only for 10 minutes. Consistency is what builds the foundation. Every single time you show up, you're casting a vote for the type of person you want to become. Like Woody Allen famously said, 80% of success is showing up. Seriously, that simple act of just being there, of making that tiny 1% effort, that's most of the battle, right there. All right, next up, you've got to shift your focus. Look, goals are great, they give you direction, but staring at the summit of the mountain can be totally paralyzing. So instead, fall in love with the climb. Love the feeling of writing just one good sentence, or doing one more push-up, or meditating for just 1 minute. The system you follow every day, that's what gets you results, not staring at the goal. James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, just nailed this idea. He said you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. That's why building a solid, reliable daily system, your 1% habit, is way more important than just having a big, lofty goal. Habit number 3 is all about steering the ship. You need to check in with yourself. How's this going? What's working? What's not? Making a tiny 1% course correction today is so much easier than trying to fix things when you realize you're 100 miles off course 6 months from now. Regular, small adjustments are key. The legendary management thinker Peter Drucker said it best. What is not measured cannot be improved. It's so true. This habit is just about paying attention, so you know exactly which little 1% tweak to make to keep getting better. And finally, we get to what might be the hardest habit of them all, patience. The results of this 1% rule are pretty much invisible at first. You won't see a huge change in a day or a week, maybe not even a month. You have to trust that all those tiny gains are compounding under the surface. It's like a bamboo plant. It spends years growing this massive root system underground where you see nothing. And then, boom, it shoots 90 feet into the air in just a few weeks. I love this quote from Joyce Meyer because it reframes the whole idea of patience. It's not just sitting around tapping your fingers. It's about keeping your faith in the process while you wait for those results to show up. It's the fuel that keeps you going. So let's pull all this together. When you combine these 4 habits, showing up, loving the process, reflecting, and being patient, you unlock the incredible future that this 1% rule promises. And this is the magic right here. For a long, long time, it's going to feel like you're working hard for nothing. It feels flat. But what you're really doing is building potential. And then, one day, you cross this critical threshold, and the results just explode upwards. That's the moment when all those invisible 1% improvements suddenly become very, very visible. Just look at how this plays out. See how flat that line is at the beginning? That's what some people call the valley of disappointment. It's where almost everyone quits because it feels pointless. But that's where you gotta practice patience. You keep showing up, you keep focusing on the process. And if you stick with it, the curve bends, and then it just shoots for the sky. That right there, that's your compounding future. And it's built by the tiny habits you choose today. So it all comes down to this one simple question. Let's forget about changing your whole life overnight. Forget the giant leap. Just ask yourself, what is one small, tiny 1% improvement you can make today? Because that is where it all begins.